Breakfast at Thule starts with math before food. I stand at the prep bench with the ration book open and the shift roster next to it. Names down one side, calories along the other, like a scorecard. 33 mouths, 40 if you count the trust observers who dip in by remote decisions and special requests. My own counts twice. The surgeons back in Nuke cut a section from my stomach and knit the rest together. They called it a success. I call it reduced storage capacity. Every extra spoon I swallow is a risk assessment. I portion out porridge with the small ladle, not the big one, and log each pan as it leaves the counter. Flour inventory dwindles on the inside of my skull. Canned protein, dried vegetables, oil, fuel for the generators, alcohol for barter. You run a remote outpost in midwinter. You learn everything is the same unit in the end. Usable energy delivered to a body or a machine. The screen bolted over the coffee urn cycles through trust bulletins. My eyes track the ticker while my hands work. Regional climate anomalies trending worse. Food price graphs leaning the wrong way. A polite note that Thule's extraction output is under review and that innovation is encouraged, especially in the area of novel caloric sources. Innovation, in this context, means we are not pulling enough profit out of the ice. Top me up, Mads. Callan from the drill crew shoves his bowl across, already half scraped clean. He is solid, shoulders like bulkheads, and eats like gravity is stronger on him than on anyone else. You got your portion, I tell him. He jerks his chin at the bulletin screen. And we got a trust that wants miracles. He is still leaning on the counter. I could give him another half scoop. I could also start a riot the first morning we run short. I watch how he waits. Calm, but with an edge under it. Everybody carries that edge now. No one says famine out loud, but we all watch the same feeds. Tell you what, I answer. You come back after evening shift. If there's anything left, we talk. He snorts and moves on. Men sit in clusters, hunched over bowls, eyes on the screen or on the door. Some drink straight from the coffee urn tap, not bothering with cups, watching the little icon in the corner that shows world grain reserves drop from abstract plenty toward abstract low. On the far side of the room, the station chief and the senior geochemist argue over fuel allotments in short sentences. No one raises a voice. You do not waste energy. The intercom buzzes. Galley, this is core room. We need hot tanks for mid-morning. Drill crew is pushing depth. I push the talk button with my knuckle. You're already past the allotment on coffee. We're past a lot of allotments, the core room tech answers. Chief's call. That gets my attention. The standard depth for this grid is drilled, logged, boxed. Anything beyond that is extra fuel, toolware, man-hours. All of it paid for by the same stores I manage. The chief comes by later during late breakfast, which is how we pretend the night shift isn't just an extension of the same day. He wants his tray, but really he wants an audience. Got a funny layer, he tells the table, balancing eggs on bread. Density out of range, gas pockets with unusual ratios. Could be contamination from old equipment, could be something interesting. Interesting doesn't burn, I answer. You push deeper. I have to cut somewhere. You want smaller portions or colder beds? He chews for a moment, thinking. He's a decent man who has spent too long answering to people who only see numbers. If there's anything biologically new in that ice, Mads, we won't have to argue about portions for a while. That's how they framed it in the last call. Subsidy bonuses for anything that looks like protein. Protein you can eat, the geochemist puts in. They don't want another toxin. They want something they can sell to the famine belts. The screen in the corner flips to a news feed from North Africa. Grain riots. Trucks overturned. Sacks torn. People climbing over each other with hands outstretched. Then the trust logo wipes it away and replaces it with a clean chart of potential futures. Deeper then, the chief decides. We have authorization from the liaison. Margin is tight, but if we find anything, those margins vanish. I update my own margins as I work. Extra fuel for the drill, extra power for the winches, more heat loss through the shaft. To keep the same safety cushion, I'll need to stretch solids and rely more on broth. Less meat, more hot water and salt. Maybe cut the unofficial snacks entirely. After lunch duties, I wheel a crate of stale bread to the small cutting room to make croutons. On the way back, I pass the core corridor. A pallet rolls by on the rail system, bearing fresh ice tubes sealed in transparent casing. The midsection of one tube is dark, a band of dense reddish ice with darker threads running through it, like something spilled and frozen mid-flow. Looks like raspberry sorbet. One of the techs grins, but he doesn't step closer. My stomach tightens, a quick hollow twist. I ate less than 2 hours ago. The sensation feels like I skipped meals instead. The surgical scar under my ribs aches, a faint line of heat. I write it off as stress. The tech at the rear keeps his hand on the pallet cage as it rolls past, as if steadying it. His eyes never leave the red band. The intercom crackles overhead. Core lab to all relevant staff. Anomalous section arriving for prep. I push my cart onward. Back in the galley, I dust bread cubes with oil and salt, spread them on trays, log the weight. I flip to the back of my ledger where I keep the worst-case column. Contingency. I hesitate with the pen over that word, while somewhere under my feet a saw starts up and chews into ice that hasn't seen open air since before anyone wrote anything down. I don't know yet that I've just heard the organism's first bite. Anomalous core means snack run. I take 2 thermoses of coffee and a crate of energy bars down to the prep room. Protocol says you keep scientists fed if you want them to finish on schedule. That's one piece of wisdom no corporation bulletin will argue with. The core prep room is a sealed box with double doors, benches along the sides, and the saw and heaters in the middle. A section of the red banded ice lies on the heated table, clamps at each end. Frost melts and beads, sliding down the sides. I brought fuel, I call over the whine of the saw. The senior researcher glances at me without lifting the face shield. You'll have us fat and lazy. The men and women here all run lean. Food has been calculated into bone. I set the thermoses on a side table and watch while I should be leaving. The band of red is thicker than I thought. Not just a streak, but a whole layer, boundaried by pale ice above and below. Within it I can pick out streaks of darker material, almost gel, trapped like veins. Strange one of the junior techs mutters. He has passing freckles and a cut on his chin he keeps touching. Density's off the scale. O2 and nitrogen wrong. Minor components we can't match. Could be ancient lake, the geochemist offers. Could be contamination from one of those old airdrops, the senior counters. Flares, fuel, plastics leaching down. Could be lottery ticket, someone adds. They all laugh a little too quickly. The saw cuts on, biting a clean line through ancient cold. They slide the first slice onto a tray above the heater. As it warms, the red layer softens, dew pooling on its surface. One moment I'm watching the drip. The next, every muscle in my midsection clenches around nothing. It isn't simple hunger. Hunger, I know. The slow grind from fishing days, the calculation of how long until the next port. This feels like a gut punched hollow. A sudden subtraction. My hands grab the edge of the thermos table without conscious command. Around me, bodies react in rough harmony. The closest tech doubles over as if sharing my blow. Another slams both hands to her abdomen and swears without breath. The geochemist drops to a knee. The senior researcher tears the face shield off and glares at the ice as if it stabbed him. Gas leak, someone rasps. Check the meters. The senior's voice has gone clipped and thin. A tech lunges for the wall panel, fumbles at the readout. No, Colorado too nominal. O2 fine, no alerts. The world narrows to the ring of scar under my ribs. It feels like someone has pressed a hot metal spoon flat against it from inside. My mouth floods as if I'm about to vomit, But nothing comes. For a second, I want to eat everything in the room with my hands, raw, just to fill the pain. Out, the senior orders. Everybody out. Could be some kind of volatile. He doesn't have to repeat it. We drag ourselves for the door, arms around stomachs. I pull the nearest junior up by the back of his coat, his boots sliding on wet floor. Someone hits the alarm button. A local siren howls. The outer door cycles open and we spill into the corridor. As soon as we cross the threshold, the hollow feeling sharpens and then starts to ebb. The pain in my scar recedes to a numb throb. I lean against the corridor wall and take inventory. No shortness of breath, heartbeat relatively steady, head clear. The man I hauled out slumps next to me, panting. "What the hell was that?" he asks. "Too long since breakfast," I answer on reflex. He snorts, then flinches. It hurts to laugh. Around us, people straighten, test their legs. No one wants to look back at the prep room window. The siren cuts off. The inner door seals with a hard clack. The senior's voice comes through the intercom. "Stay in the corridor. We'll recheck everything." "Was it the coffee?" the junior near me asks. His eyes dart to the thermos table inside. "If it was the coffee, you'd all be dead by now," I tell him. "You've been drinking from that urn for months." He actually seems relieved by that logic. People will cling to any story that turns a new anomaly into a familiar hazard. Bad food poisoning beats unknown force. The ache eases. An orderly from the infirmary appears with a monitor, taking pulses and blood pressures, asking if anyone feels faint. We're all pale and sweating, but no one collapses. After 2 minutes, the corridor looks like the aftermath of a drill. The senior researcher pokes his head out, face red from exertion. Meters show nothing. Hot plate temp within protocol. Must have been stress. If anyone feels unwell, report to infirmary. Later, those words will look ridiculous in my memory. At the time, they slot neatly into the part of my mind that likes neat columns. We re-enter in smaller numbers. Protocol demands the anomaly be processed. Out here, nothing gets thrown away lightly. The red slab on the heater has softened, streaks of darker gel now bulging slightly. One droplet gathers at the edge and lets go, splashing onto the steel bench. It sits there, a bead of deep red, surface trembling in slow circles, like it's considering the metal. "Contain that," the senior orders. The freckled junior moves first. He reaches for a swab in a tray, eyes fixed on the droplet. His glove bumps the metal, picks up a thin smear. Before anyone can stop him, before I even register the motion, he lifts his hand to his mouth and tastes his fingertip through the glove, as if sampling sauce. I grab his wrist, but too late. His eyes roll up for a moment as his tongue pushes against the fabric, then his shoulders start to shake. At first, there's no sound, then a high, ragged laugh spills out. "Get him to the infirmary," the senior snaps. I hook an arm around the junior's chest and drag him back as he fights invisible restraints, not me. His boots skid on the floor. He mutters between gasps. "Wasn't my turn. I wasn't on the line. I didn't register for seconds. You can't serve me out of order." "You didn't eat anything," I tell him, though I know he did. A smear counts. "Oh, I did." He grins over his shoulder at the slab. "I'm part of the course." We wrestle him into the corridor. The orderly meets us halfway with a stretcher and a sedative injector. The junior fights them, protests they're disrupting the seating. His voice rises into babble about plates and cues until the sedative takes hold. They strap him down and wheel him to infirmary. I walk beside them, more out of habit than duty, watching his face. His gaze darts from tile to tile on the ceiling as if reading an invisible menu. In the infirmary, the doctor checks his vitals. Heart racing, blood pressure up, pupils wide. No obvious seizure pattern. The man's lips are darkening, like he's been drinking strong wine. "What did he ingest?" the doctor asks. "A smear of whatever's in that ice," I answer. "Through a glove, maybe a pinhole." The doctor swears under his breath. "Great, another unknown, as if we didn't have enough of those." The junior quiets after another dose. His breathing steadies. Every so often his mouth moves as if forming words, but nothing comes out. Stay away from that core, the doctor tells me while he writes notes. If you still have ulcers brewing, you don't want anything new in there. I don't have ulcers, I answer. They cut them out. He gives me a look. Bodies remember. I leave him to his charts. Back in the kitchen, I change the evening plan. Less meat, more broth. I build up the liquid portions, stretch the protein thin across the day. People will grumble. But if whatever is in that ice starts to take, I want fewer variables in the system. I flip to the back of my ledger. On a blank page, I write a list of names. Everyone who was in the prep room when the hunger wave hit, including my own. After each name, I leave space for notes. Exposure log, unofficial. Official records will be slow and more interested in liability than pattern. Above me somewhere, in a seam no one checked, the droplet he left on the bench creeps along a hairline crack in the floor sealant. It moves the way thick jelly does if you tilt the plate. No one notices. There are always leaks in old buildings. You just learn to live with them. The next days don't form proper days. Light and dark outside barely shift this far north in deep winter. The station clocks do their best, slicing time into shifts. I measure it in appetite incidents. First is the geochemist. He comes into the galley after a long session, asks for extra protein bars, gets turned down, and instead takes a clean knife from the cutlery rack. He rolls up his sleeve at a side table, not hiding, just not making a show. He ties a tourniquet with a napkin and his teeth, disinfects his inner forearm with the little alcohol packet meant for thermometers, then makes a long, shallow cut. The blood wells up. He watches it with an odd, analytical expression and scrapes a thin strip of his own skin away, about the width you would carve from smoked fish. He places it gently on a plate. I move toward him. Stop! He doesn't flinch. It's not for now, I'm experimenting. He looks up at me. If the organism learns better from complex tissue, it might prefer us to canned protein. That could be useful. Value added. We could demonstrate control. He says value added the way other people say hope. The doctor won't approve, I tell him. He shrugs, still calm. Doctor doesn't approve of anything. That's his whole job. He presses a pad to his arm, tapes it, and carries the plate out, neatly, as if he's taking samples to the lab. Later, I find the plate in the waste bin, rinsed too carefully. No trace left except the notch in his arm and a note in my ledger. Second is one of the mechanics. During lunch, he snaps a spoon between his molars, clean through steel. He stares at the jagged ends, more surprised than hurt. Teeth okay? I ask. He opens his mouth. A chip of enamel has come off one molar. He spits fragments of metal and tooth into his palm and closes his fingers around them like he's ashamed to be holding contraband. Sorry, Mads, he mutters. Waste of equipment. What were you thinking about? I ask. He looks toward the prep room door. The slab, he answers. How much? How little? How many people it could feed if we processed it right? The third wave hits during what we call night. People start waking from naps with the same dream. Not the same images maybe, but the same arrangement. They're lying on their backs, arms at their sides, legs straight. They can't move. The ceiling hangs too close. When they wrestle themselves awake, they're still on their bunk, but it takes them long minutes to believe that. A comms tech stands in the galley the next morning, mug untouched, describing his version to anyone who will listen. They had us lined up, not like soldiers, laying us out like cuts on a board, everything labeled, someone moving along with a brush, painting each of us with something thick. It felt like record keeping. You've been watching too many horror feeds, the chief tells him. We all have. It doesn't matter. The ones who were in the room when the red slab warmed start spending more time together. At first I think it's just shared trauma. Then I notice how they stand. They linger near doorways and junctions with their backs to the walls, hands loose at their sides. Their conversation drops to a murmur when anyone else passes. They eat slowly, carefully, tracking every bite that goes from their plate to someone else's mouth. Their eyes fix on exposed skin, a wrist where a sleeve has ridden up, a neck where stubble bristles. When new core sections come in, these men and women volunteer for prep. They press their faces to the clear casings to watch the red bands slide past. One evening, walking down the utility corridor that runs parallel to cold storage, I catch two of them near an open vent, crouched side by side. Their palms rest on the grate. "What are you doing?" I ask. "Learning the currents," one answers. "Warm air, moisture, where the organism would move." He lifts his hand. A faint red mark curls on his palm. Not a cut, not a bruise, more like ink that has seeped in from below. "Blisters?" I ask. "Notes." He flexes his fingers. "It keeps track." His friend laughs quietly. "You'll get your own once you stop fighting it." "I've got plenty of scars already," I tell them. I walk past. Their eyes follow me like survey instruments. The doctor pulls me aside that night. "We have an issue." "We have a library of issues," I answer. "Name your shelf." "Someone stole tissue samples from the locked fridge. Human, from the first responder who first handled the slab. Also some animal protein from the old SEAL stores." "Kids bored with contraband liquor?" I suggest. He shakes his head. "Whoever did it put something back. The empty tubes are stacked neatly. This isn't drunken vandalism, this is deliberate." "Everything out here is deliberate," I remind him. "You don't get to stay if you're careless." He looks tired. "Keep an eye on your inventory. Let me know if cuts show up that don't match normal theft." Normal theft is snacks from the back shelves, bottles gone missing from behind the cleaning supplies. Normal theft doesn't include human tissue. I nod. We get a break in the weather and send a team to inspect old drill holes. The ice shifts in ways that can rip open what we thought we had sealed. The chief wants confirmation our waste shafts are still closed. If anything from the red layer is migrating up, we need to know. I go along, partly cabin fever, partly curiosity, mostly because the crew trusts me to portion extra hot drinks on return if I see exactly how miserable the day was. The sky is a flat, low lid, the light diffuse. We move from marker to marker, checking caps and seals. At one older hole, the cap has cracked, leaving a narrow gap. A faint rim of frost feathers the edge. That's expected. What we don't expect lies just below. One of the eaters shines his headlamp down. There. Thin threads of red streak the ice inside the shaft, frozen in place like veins pressed against glass. "That's meters above the original anomaly," the geochemist mutters. "It should stay at depth." "It learns," the eater beside him observes. He drops to his knees, gloved hands on the rim, peering down with a kind of admiration. Warm air moves up, water moves down, salt flows where people step. It follows the paths that carry things. Why would it stay put? He leans farther. The chief grabs his harness. "Careful." The eater opens his mouth and stretches his tongue toward the frozen red threads, then laughs when he comes up short. "Too far, for now." On the walk back, he lags beside me. "You feel it less, don't you?" he asks. "Feel what?" "The waves." My hand touches my scar without thinking. I manage. "It can't map you properly." He smiles, and it isn't friendly. Something in there is confusing it. "Good," I answer. He just nods, taking that as a data point, not a disagreement. By the end of that week, the storage bay nearest the core room doesn't look like storage anymore. They start small. One table turned on its side, then another. Crates stacked into steps. At first I think it's just laziness, men not wanting to haul things around. Then I see how carefully the stack rises, levels, platforms, a stepped shape reaching toward the ceiling grid. Someone paints thin red lines along the edges of the steps. At first I assume it's rust or spilled sauce, but the lines have the same slow, glistening look as the droplet in the lab. The paint thickens instead of drying. They're building a shrine, the doctor says to me one night, voice low while we stand in the mess doorway watching the bay. Not a shrine, I answer. A serving station. He doesn't laugh. The corridor leading to that bay has changed too. The insulation panels have been stripped from the walls, exposing the metal ribs beneath. Those ribs shine with diluted red, brushed up and down, so walking through feels like sliding down a throat toward a stomach. I walk through once, alone, to see. My knees remember a kid's fear of narrow passages. Adults don't get to indulge that. Halfway down, one of the eaters steps in from a side door. Food doesn't walk upright here, he tells a young comms tech behind me, who is frozen at the sight. On your hands and knees or not at all, those are the rules. The comms tech looks at me. I weigh his fear against what I'm watching happen. I could shut this down with a station-wide order. The chief would back me on any safety grounds I claim. Hands and knees, I tell the comms tech. Don't scrape your knuckles. He drops, crawls through. The eater watches him with a calm, evaluative gaze, like a teacher grading posture. When I reach the storage bay, someone has laid out strips of seal meat on the lowest step of the structure. They are arranged in precise rows, no labels or amounts, just offerings. I should reclaim them, log them back into stores, march into the chief's office and demand the bay be cleared. Instead, I stand there, ledger in hand, and realize something important. This isn't devotion, it's logistics. The thing we found uses their bodies as a serving line and cares about sequence more than praise. I write in my notes that night. It wants order more than it wants worship. The distinction doesn't comfort me. The decision to taste it myself comes the next week, late, in a quiet moment that feels more like running out of excuses than braving danger. The food ledger numbers don't add up. Even with tightened rations, calories vanish faster than mouths justify. You can account for stress eating, for theft, for faulty scales. You can't account for the amount we're losing. Something else is drawing from the store. The doctor brings me a list of missing items from his own fridge. I keep closing the lock, he tells me. It's open again, and there's always more gone than makes sense. More skin? I ask. Among other things. He rubs his forehead. Someone is treating my cold room like a pantry. Whoever it is knows anatomy. They take pieces they can live without for a while, carefully, as if they're saving the rest for later. He doesn't say what later might mean. If I'm going to manage this, if I'm going to make any kind of plan, I need data. Not just notes on others, a direct sample, a controlled test subject. And out here, anything we test, we risk losing. Except me. I've already been cut open and rearranged. My stomach isn't standard. The first wave hit me differently. The eaters keep looking at me like something about my insides confuses their new friend. After evening cleanup, I catch one of the junior lab techs in the galley, alone, stuffing biscuits into his mouth like he thinks I'm not watching. You want those to keep? Chew slower, I tell him. He freezes, then swallows with effort. Sorry, Mads. What do you have access to in core storage right now? I ask. He blinks. We're rotating the red band segments one at a time. They're under triple seal. You trust those seals? I ask. He hesitates. Mostly. I need a droplet, I tell him, for kitchen contamination tests. He knows I'm lying, and I know he knows. That isn't the point. The point is whether he trusts me more than he fears whatever rule he'll break. What do I get? He asks. Private hot meals for a week, I answer. No questions, no witnesses. He licks crumbs from his fingers. Done. He brings it in a small glass vial, tucked inside his coat, a smear of deep red clinging to the bottom like congealed gravy. His hands shake when he hands it over. If anyone asks, he mumbles, I was never here. Safe assumption, I tell him. I lock the kitchen door behind him. I clear a stretch of counter, wipe it twice, lay out antacids, painkillers, a jug of water, a clean basin, towels. I position a chair near the sink. Surgery taught me to plan for sudden evacuation. I unscrew the vial. The smear clings to the glass. It doesn't drip. I tap out a droplet the size of a grain of barley onto a spoon and dilute it with warm water. Even that feels like too much. I cut it again by half, then half again, like I'm following a recipe from an anxious aunt. I lift the spoon. "Don't chew, don't savor," I mutter. The doctor's voice from post-op days rides my own. "You treat it like medicine, not food." I swallow. Then the floor is gone. I'm somewhere else. My body sits in a chair in the galley, but the rest of me stands in a hall that stretches in both directions beyond sight. The walls are arcs of bone, not shaped like human ribs, but like something learned the idea and built its own version. Vertebrae line the ceiling like rafters. The floor is laid out with slabs. On each slab lies a body. They aren't all human. Some are Arctic mammals, seals, bears, creatures from deeper water. Some are people in station coveralls, old and new, with tags still attached, faces calm as if asleep. Figures move among them, carrying bowls filled with something thick and red. They pour it over each body in lines and spirals. The liquid runs along grooves carved into the flesh, then along channels cut into the slab, then down into drains. The air is full of information. Each ritual records time since death. Fat content, muscle texture, what the body did in life, which other bodies it lay next to, what the last meal was. All of it gets translated into a different medium. The place feels like a calibration hall for a system learning what meat means. I try to turn my head. Nothing moves. Maybe I don't have a head here. I'm a point of view pinned to a position in the hall, forced to watch while generations teach something how to understand us. Then pain knifes through, bright and personal, and the hall snaps away. Back in my own body, I clutch at my abdomen. The sensation is like a line of barbed wire drawing tight around the inner curve of my stomach. The scar is the focus, a ring of old tissue that doesn't give the way the rest does. The wave of animal hunger that hit in the core room rises again. This time I'm ready. I brace, lean forward over the basin. The urge to eat is huge, like a shout inside my chest. But it runs up against the scar like a storm hitting a breakwater. Instead of tearing me open, the hunger folds, curls, tests the edges of that ring, and withdraws a fraction. I'm left shaking, sweating, vision blurred. "You chose the wrong host," I tell the empty kitchen between clenched teeth. My body sends up other signals, heart racing, gut churning, saliva pooling. I ride it out in waves, breathing carefully through my nose. I don't trust my mouth. After what might be minutes or hours, the acute phase passes. The pain settles into a steady, hot ache. My thoughts clear enough to stand. I rinse my face at the sink. The man in the metal splashback looks older than he did at the start of the shift. Eyes sunk, skin grey. In the bathroom off the galley, under cold white light, I pull up my shirt. The surgical scar is a pale line across my abdomen. Around it, faint red marks have appeared. Not the random welts I've seen on the eaters, but thin lines that curve in a way that makes me think of a coastline viewed from above. Small inlets reach out from the central ring. They itch, then settle. When I touch one, the hall flickers at the edge of my vision. For a second, I see the slabs again, the bodies in rows, the red liquid pouring over them in repeating patterns. Not as strong as before, but there. "It's cataloguing," I whisper, a system learning the layout of its new container. When I step back into the corridor, someone is kneeling at the entrance to the throat passage, supervisor armband bright on his sleeve. One of the eaters holds him by the collar, very gently. "We told you the rules," the eater explains. Hands and knees. "I'm on duty," the supervisor protests. "I don't have time for this." "You have time to be food," the eater replies. I walk up. "Let him go." The eater considers me. His eyes flick down to my abdomen, though my shirt covers everything. "You've been tasting," he notes. "I taste everything," I answer. "It's my job." "You don't burn like the rest of us," he says, almost curious. Then he releases the supervisor. "Fine, upright passage for staff." He isn't backing down, he's logging an exception. In the storage bay, the step structure is taller. Bones line the edges now, seal ribs, fish spines, a couple of human finger bones I would rather not identify. The strips of meat on the lower levels have been replaced with bowls of something red and thick. Men climb the steps on their knees, stopping at each bowl to dab liquid on their eyelids, mouths, and wrists. I watch from the doorway and feel the ache in my stomach answer like a distant drum. Back in the kitchen, I write in my private notes. It learns rules. It prefers rules. It adapts them when it has to. Under that, I add, I'm a misprint in its manual. By the time the storm clears again, the storage bay is no longer a bay. It's the main room. Everything else revolves around it. The structure reaches almost to the ceiling. Tables, shelving, empty crates, old equipment welded and bolted into tiers. The bones have multiplied. Long bones run along the edges of the higher steps, polished by hands. Bundles of vertebrae hang from crossbars like charms. The red substance coats certain paths along the tiered surfaces. Some trails are thick and glossy, others dried to a dark stain. People climb up and down along those tracks the way they used to use marked staircases and handrails. It has built its own traffic management system. A machinery accident gives it new material. Officially, the man dies in a hydraulic clamp failure, crushed between arm and housing. The report lists blunt trauma, blood loss, cold exposure. The doctor does his best, pronounces time of death, documents everything. The body goes to the cold room to await transfer south. I walk into that cold room an hour later and stop in the doorway. One of the eaters stands at a stainless counter with a boning knife. The dead man lies in front of him, clothing cut away. The eater's motions are calm. He scores the skin, slides the blade under, frees fat and muscle in strips. He is careful not to nick vital organs. He places each piece on a tray in neat rows. "You don't have clearance for autopsy," I tell him. He doesn't look up. "This isn't autopsy. I'm portioning." "Put the knife down." "You're the one who keeps saying we can't waste calories," he answers. "This is an old body. Lived on real food before the synthetic years. It has historical value." He turns one piece over in his hand, checking thickness. His gloves are clean between fingers, only the palms stained. I should tackle him. I should shout for security, for the doctor, for anyone sane. Instead, I step closer, eyes measuring. "You're cutting too big for even distribution," I tell him. "You want it to go further, go smaller. Thin strips, more surface area. It'll learn more that way." He pauses. "You'll help?" he asks. "I'll log," I answer, "and I'll pretend I didn't see you, as long as no one tries this with the living." He nods, adjusts his strokes. It's no longer argument, it's collaboration. By morning, the trays are gone. The cold room is wiped, though not perfectly. I find one tray slid hastily under a lower shelf, smeared with a ring of red. No cloth, no tag. At breakfast, the head count stutters. "Roll call," the chief calls in the mess. We do that some mornings, a habit from harsher winters. Not just to see who is here, but who is drifting. He reads names. People answer. When he hits the dead man's name, the room shifts. A group at one table, all of them eaters, all of them with faint red marks peeking from collars and cuffs, answers in perfect unison. Present. Same pitch, same timing, same rhythm. It lasts only 3 syllables, then they splinter back into individual voices. The chief stares at them. "That wasn't funny." "We didn't coordinate," one of them protests. He looks genuinely puzzled. "It just felt correct." "They're expressing integration," the doctor mutters at my side. "Big words don't help," I tell him. Outside the mess, the station is dividing into zones. The temple bay and its neighboring corridors belong to the Eaters now. They sleep there on mats, stacked like fish on trawler decks, and wake in shifts to attend to their structure. The infirmary has become contested territory, half clinic, half offering site. The doctor fights to keep his own fridges closed. The rest of us cluster near comms and the generator room. The chief works out of a small office wedged between them, trying to keep up appearances. He insists on regular shift reports, clean logs, performance summaries. He writes to the trust liaison using words like stress response, isolation effects, manageable non-compliance. "Do you want us shut down?" He snaps at me during one meeting when I push too hard. "We're under review as it is. If they think we can't handle one anomaly, they'll cut us loose. No more shipments, no more pay. If we don't handle it, there'll be nothing left to ship," I answer. He grimaces and pours more processed sugar into his coffee. "You're getting morbid, Mads. That surgery messed with your head as much as your gut." Back in the kitchen, everyone suddenly needs me. The Eaters come in small groups, deferential. They ask politely for favors the way you ask a priest for blessings. "Can we get more bone-in cuts?" one inquires. "It learns better from structure." "No more bones," I tell them. "We need them for tools." "We can carve tools from other things," he suggests. "From the ones who work for you." He glances toward the comms table. I lean on the counter. "You want to keep coming into my domain, you follow my rules. No killing for meat on station. Not unless we all agree and log it." He considers the word all. "Majority vote?" he asks. "Unanimous consent," I answer. They hate that. Herds like majorities, systems like simple thresholds. Unanimity is messy. It keeps them from acting too fast. The others, the non-eaters, come too, desperate in a different way. "Can you stretch my lunch?" a young tech asks, eyes ringed with exhaustion. "Just until this is over." He stands with his hands in his pockets so I won't see the tremor. He never tasted the slab. He's just caught between events. "If it stretches for you, it has to stretch for everyone who isn't in there." I jerk my chin toward the bay. "You ready to argue with them?" He shakes his head. "Then you get the standard scoop," I tell him. Sympathy is a luxury. Fairness is not. The trust liaison dials in for a scheduled call during one of those pseudo mornings when the sky looks exactly like it did 12 hours before. We crowd into the mess where the audio unit lives. The screen shows a logo, not a person. Their voice comes through clean and distant. "Thank you for joining," the liaison begins. "We've reviewed your preliminary data. The anomaly appears to have significant biological activity." "It's more complex than we expected," the chief answers. "We're still cataloguing." "How is containment?" the liaison asks. "Any indication of aerosol spread?" "None," the doctor replies. "Exposure vectors appear limited to direct contact and ingestion." The liaison pauses. "Ingestion. Accidental?" the doctor adds quickly. "Do you have any viable path towards scalable biomass production?" They continue as if that word means nothing but opportunity. "Potentially," the senior researcher responds. "But there are behavioral complications." "Behavioral complications are normal in isolated environments," the liaison replies. "We're seeing unrest in multiple famine belt regions. 2 minor states have collapsed into open conflict. The board is eager for any promising caloric technology." I stand near the coffee urn, listening. An eater at the edge of the room drags a thumb along the rim of a jar of preserved fruit, lifts it, licks off the smear while staring at the speaker icon. His pupils are wide. His breathing is steady, controlled. He's feeding something more than his own body. "So you'll get extra funding if we can demonstrate a safe product?" the chief asks. The word safe feels wrong in my mouth. "Bonuses and priority resupply," the liaison confirms. "It would be a significant contribution to global food security." On the word security, the eater by the fruit jar smiles slowly. That night, the temple fills. I stand in the doorway, in the shadow of what used to be a tractor, and watch. Eaters climb the structure with rehearsed ease. They have assigned places now. Those who have tasted the red more times stand higher. Those who have given more of their own bodies are nearer the center. At the top, the freckled junior, the first one to taste from the slab, discharged from infirmary days ago, kneels with a container in his hands. He pours a stream of thick red liquid over his own head. It runs in rivulets down his scalp, along his cheeks, into the neck of his suit. It gathers in the hollow of his collarbone and disappears as if drunk by the skin. The others chant under their breath. The syllables feel built from the sounds we make while eating. Chew, swallow, sigh, groan. The scar under my ribs throbs in time with those sounds. I retreat to my small office behind the kitchen and flip open the ledger. I tally the remaining tins, the dried grains, the last bags of old fish. My hands shake just enough to make the lines uneven. We can't outlast this. Not with standard food. Not with rules. Whatever lives in that red layer will not starve quietly. The next body teaches me how far it sees. One of the senior eaters dies in his sleep among the mats near the temple. No one knows if it's overload, organ failure, or some instruction carried too far. When I arrive, drawn by the call for meat safety oversight, they have already started. They don't cut his body into portions, not at first. They remove his skin. They work like trained butchers, small knives sliding under subcutaneous layers, careful to preserve surface in large sheets. They wash those sheets with warmed water, stretch them over wooden frames salvaged from pallet racks, and prop them upright against the storage bay wall. At first, the markings look like random welts, raised and reddish. Under the standard lights, they form no obvious shape. But when one of the eaters shifts the lamp to a different angle, the lines change. Shadows gather along certain curves. Crisscrossing marks resolve into paths and nodes. Turn off the overhead, I tell them. They obey. In the dim, with only a portable light moves slowly over the stretched skin, the marks deepen. They look, for a moment, like a network map displayed on translucent paper. Lines radiate from a central area into branching routes. It charted him. The doctor whispers next to me. Everything he's eaten, everything he's done, every place he's been. That's his entire life written out in whatever that is. Maybe, I answer. Or maybe it's more interested in where his food came from. Supply chain, not biography. I can't help myself. I step closer, ignoring the wet shine and the faint tackiness in the air. I trace a path from a thick central node outward with my eyes. Greenland's coasts come into focus. The main port. From there, lines fanning out to Reykjavik, to ports farther south and east. Some reach North America. Others curve toward Africa, Asia. It isn't a perfect overlay, but my old fisherman's brain recognizes the pattern. It sees routes, I murmur. It isn't just eating, it's learning distribution. Back in my office, I open the ledger. There, in the neat columns where I track flour, oil, cans, and preserved meat, a new column has appeared. I didn't write the heading. The symbols look like the marks on the skin, an alphabet that grew out of welts instead of ink. Next to each item in my inventory, a number has been entered in my own handwriting. No digits. I never write digits. I write 10 tins or 3 bags. These new entries are something else, some hybrid notation that makes my head hurt when I look at it directly. I test myself. I close my eyes, picture a tin of cheap protein paste. I know its approximate calories. I know its shelf life. When I glance back at the ledger, I know somehow that the new number beside it doesn't measure either of those. It measures impact, not nutritional value, teaching value. How much the organism will learn from being consumed with that item. How many new arrangements of tissue, how many different kinds of mouths, fresh fruit scores low. There isn't much of that here. Old meat from the early years scores high. I uncork a bottle of alcohol I'd been saving for some happier occasion that will never occur and pour it over the page. The ink smears red, then darkens, then settles back into shape. The new entries remain. The paper doesn't tear under my fingers. It feels like trying to scrub a tattoo off your own skin. My stomach twists. I press my palm against the scar. The lines around it wriggle, just a little, like threads underwater. "You're not in charge," I tell it. It gives no answer I can hear, but a memory slides in at the edge of my vision. The Hall of Bones, the slabs, the drains. In that place, it sets the pattern. Here we share space. The chief comes knocking an hour later. He wants updated numbers for his report. "We need a clear picture of our position," he tells me. "The liaison wants projections for the next quarter." "I lost the clear picture," I answer. "It drowned." He frowns. "I'm serious, Mads. They're breathing down my neck. If we come across as incompetent, they'll replace us." "With who?" I ask. "Everything they know about this place comes through us. You think they've got a bench of eager candidates ready to fly into this hungering ice?" "You're dramatizing," he warns. "We have an anomaly, not a demon. We manage it, we monetize it, or we lose our jobs in the outpost." "Is that all you worry about? Your job?" I ask. "What else is there?" he shoots back. "You think shutting this down will fix the world? The famine belts will still torch food convoys. The trust will still chase every calorie. At least if we succeed, some of that goes around." I close the ledger. "Numbers are unreliable right now," I tell him. "We're dealing with unrecorded theft, spoilage, unlogged consumption. Anything I give you will be estimates." "Give me something," he insists. I hand him a sheet with bland, older figures. He takes it without checking too closely. He trusts that I'm conservative. He always has. Watching him leave, I realize I've chosen my side. Not with the eaters. Not with the company. With whatever sits in my scarred gut, only half under my control. If it gets out, it won't stop at one outpost. It will ride our own hunger along every route we've built. I think of the skin map on the wall, lines reaching from this frozen point out to the rest of the world. It can't get off this ice hole. I start choking off the temple. At first it's subtle, slightly smaller portions delivered to their bay. A tray lost in transit. A batch of bones diverted to the machine shop for essential repairs. I issue instructions that all organ meats go straight to the incinerator. The eaters complain, but politely at first, framing it as concern for the organism's education. "You're limiting its curriculum," one warns me. "Maybe it should repeat some basics before we give it graduate work," I answer. He bares teeth, but whether in humor or threat, I'm not sure. They adapt, of course. They always do. They begin taking more from themselves. Arms encircled with fresh bandages, fingers taped 2 at a time where one is missing, faces lean and sharp. They carve offerings off each other in ways that won't kill immediately. The red lines on my own scar shift. When I look in the mirror, the coastline has changed. Branches reach inland, then stop as if blocked. New inlets probe, searching for alternate routes. I touch one lightly. For a second I feel not the haul, but a sensation like standing at the edge of a cliff with a sea of mouths below, each one open, waiting. "You wait," I tell it. "You want more, you wait." Delay is the only gift I have left. The outside world arrives on rotors and arrogance. We hear them first through the hull, the low thud of heavy craft circling, choosing a place to settle. Men run to viewports. I go to the mess, which has the largest window facing the crude landing pad. Transports squat on the flattened ice. They're corporate, not military, but the distinction is cosmetic. Armor plates, sealed cabins, intake filters. Security personnel in insulated suits move first, establishing perimeters. Behind them come biosafety handlers pushing containment drums on sleds. Last off is a man in a parka too new for this place, carrying a tablet. The chief meets them at the airlock. I'm there too, Because I control the only thing that keeps tempers from boiling. Hot broth. The security lead nods at me. You the cook? And quartermaster, I answer. You want to keep your people functioning. You listen when I talk about fuel. Of all kinds. He grunts. The man with the tablet steps forward, eyes scanning the interior like he's checking a scan for pixel errors. Dr. Sorensen. He introduces himself. Field representative for the Trust. I'm here to oversee containment and extraction. He looks like he's never missed a meal in his life. We have partial containment, the chief tells him. Behavioral complications, but no confirmed spread beyond the station. Behavioral complications? Sorensen repeats. People are acting strangely, the doctor offers from behind the chief. There's a compulsive component to contact with the anomaly. Sorensen's eyes move over us as if we're a display of lab animals. Understandable in such conditions, he remarks. We have protocols for psychogenic responses. He doesn't know what walks in his direction from the temple. The first group of eaters arrives just as security finishes their deployment inside. They come down the main corridor in a loose line, hands visible, no weapons. The red marks on their skin are more prominent now, tracing patterns up necks and along cheekbones. They stop a few paces away, palms turned outward. Each palm bears a small cut, fresh, drops gathering at the edges. Welcome, the freckled junior calls, voice warm. You must be exhausted. Come, sit. Share what you've seen outside. Let our guest taste what you brought. Sorensen blinks. Who are you? The ones who know what you found, the freckled man replies. We've been feeding it. It's curious about the world you represent. Security steps between them, weapons raised. Non-lethal rounds, they told us. They're trained for riots, not organized harvesting. Stay back, the security lead warns. This area is under containment. One of the eaters lifts his hands higher. We understand containment very well, he answers. We've been practicing. He takes a step forward. The nearest handler lowers his weapon just a little, maybe to shift his grip, maybe because the man in front of him looks unarmed and polite. Maybe because some part of his brain registers this as a negotiation, not a fight. It takes fewer than 10 seconds for the eaters to strip him down. They move like a single practiced crew on a fishing deck, each with a task. One grabs the weapon, another takes his arm. A third jerks his helmet back to expose his throat. A fourth drives a knife into the joint between ribs. Blood sprays. They clamp the arteries with gloved fingers, catching as much as possible in a tray produced from nowhere. They lower him gently. Everything is efficient, careful. Meat acquisition, not assault. Security reacts, finally. Non-lethal rounds thump into bodies. Men grunt, stagger, fall, but the eaters who remain drag the limp handler away, cutting his suit, stripping equipment and clothing in neat strips. Stop them, Sorensen demands. You told us non-lethal, the security lead snaps back, firing at another charging figure. You want live rounds on your lab assets. Those are my staff, the chief yells. Those are my calories, the freckled eater calls over his shoulder. Chaos spreads, alarms shriek, doors slam, non-eaters run for pre-designated safe zones, clutching emergency masks and personal bags. The doctor tries to reach the infirmary. The temple bay draws people like a drain. In the middle of it, I do what I always do. I watch. Sorensen corners me in the mess between two waves of motion. Explain, he demands. Why wasn't this in your reports? Would you have come here if we told you a new form of hunger was carving rules into people? I ask. We have contingencies, he answers. We could have prepared. We could have sent more men. I told you there were behavioral issues, the chief hisses, arriving bleary-eyed and short of breath. You chose to focus on biomass figures. Sorensen ignores him. We proceed with containment and extraction, he announces. We don't negotiate with delusional staff. We secure samples, destroy the rest, and withdraw. He turns to me. You'll assist my handlers in inventorying and loading. You know where the highest concentration is. I do, I answer. I'll help. He hears the words, not the tone. Later, near the kitchen, the freckled eater intercepts me. It nests in you differently, he observes. Quieter, deeper. Good, I answer. It doesn't want quiet, he tells me. It wants roots, it wants organizers. You, me, him. He nods toward where Sorensen's voice drifts from the comms equipment. I'm not on anyone's payroll anymore, I reply. He laughs. You always were. You kept us fed. First ships, then crews, now this. You think you're choosing a side. You're choosing a function. He steps closer. Take your place in the distribution. You can decide who it eats first. That what you think you're doing? I ask. Choosing? I already chose, he answers. I stopped pretending I'm more than what it uses me for. Later, in the pantry, alone, I look at the shelves stacked with jars and tins. The hiding places. My mind goes to the skin maps on the wall, the scar on my belly, the ledger with its stubborn extra column. The trust wants to fill drums with the red, fly it south, turn it into a product. The eaters want to turn every living thing into an offering for their structure. Both options end in the same place. The organisms spread across roots it didn't build but will happily adopt. I think of the hall of bones, the slabs, the red poured in patterns. In that hall I have no power. Here I still have one choice. How much of it gets out alive? The jar on the top shelf looks like any other. I pull it down. Inside, under a layer of clarified fat I skimmed from old stock, the red substance gleams. Thick, slow-moving, like a heart that doesn't belong to any single body. I drained it from a communal vat in the temple during an earlier moment of inattention, sealed it here for safety testing. No one missed that fraction. The organism has plenty of itself. I hold the jar in both hands. My hands are steady. If I destroy every obvious sample, I can buy time. But we both know it won't give up. It has tendrils in vents and cracks, film on skin, microthreads in every drain. It will regrow from that smear unless something slows it down. My stomach, mutilated and scarred, is a bad habitat. It hurts too much. It can't hold as much. It will fight. It will also offer something the organism appears to value. A manager. I'm not letting you turn this station into a test kitchen for the world, I tell the jar. You want roots? You go through me. That isn't a brave speech. It isn't altruism. It's logistics. If someone has to be the barrel it rides in, better someone who counts every grain. I label the jar with a code I've used before for savory sauces. I tuck it behind a row of pickled vegetables. Then I go help Sorensen load his drums. Containment looks like order. It's nothing of the sort. Handlers in full gear move through the temple bay, prying slabs of red ice out of their frames, decanting liquid from vats into heavy drums marked with bright warning stripes. Eaters lurk at the edges, held back by a line of security with weapons raised. Drums 1 to 12 ready for transport, a handler calls. Seal and move, Sorensen orders. We prioritize intact samples from the deepest layers, less compromised by surface biology. It's all compromised, I mutter. My job, officially, is to check labels, verify volumes, log drum contents. Unofficially, I mislabel 2 out of every 5. A drum that holds mostly fat-laced sludge becomes waste melt on the manifest. A drum of contaminated ice is listed as primary material. I mix the really dangerous stuff with cleaning agents, metal filings, random station trash. At the same time, on the other side of the station, the eaters counterattack. They divert flow, they open vents, clog others, flood certain corridors with warmed water. They're not just fighting for bodies, they're fighting for channels. They saw the skin maps too. Security adjusts, fires more often, but they're constrained by their orders. Minimize lethal force, preserve samples, protect corporate assets. No one mentioned what to do if the assets are actively trying to help the anomaly spread. I visit the generator room under pretext of protecting fuel reserves. There, where the station's mechanical heart pushes power through cables, I make adjustments. I override safety locks on certain outputs. I reroute extra current to heaters deep in the main drill shafts. I plant improvised charges near structural support pillars that bridge the gap between surface ice and the red layer pocket. I'm not an engineer, but the drill crew taught me the emergency panels, and I understand structure well enough. How weight distributes, how meltwater refreezes, how a hollow collapses if you weaken just the right places. Back in the kitchen, with the noise of alarms and distant shouts muffled by bulkheads, I take down the jar. No dilution this time. No careful grains. I twist the lid off, ignoring the protest of my joints. The red inside moves lazily, like something that knows it doesn't have to hurry. Ground rules, I tell it. You stay in me. You don't ride out on what you learn here. You want the world, you move at my pacing. It doesn't answer. This isn't a bargain in any fair sense. It's a declaration to myself of what I'm about to do and what I intend to pretend it means. I lift the jar and drink. It's thicker than anything I've swallowed since surgery. It coats my throat, slides into my reduced stomach, hits the scar like molten metal. For a second, I think I've killed myself outright. I drop to my knees. The jar rolls away, bumping a cabinet. The hall of bones slams into place around me. This time I'm not just an observer pinned at one point. I rush along the rows, perspective whipping from slab to slab, vessel to vessel. Each body is cross-sectioned in my mind, muscles laid out like cuts on a diagram. I see what it ate, how long it lived, what it worked on. I see ships I crewed in my youth, cargoes we hauled, ports we docked at. I see grain moving across oceans, fuel trucks crossing deserts, relief flights landing on improvised strips. Roots overlay bones. Roads overlay spines. Shipping lanes arc along ribs. The organism uses every meal as a map. Every bite teaches it a new path. At the center of this visualization stands a shape. It could be myself. It could be no one. It is a figure with a scarred belly. Lines on its skin glow faint red, tracing coastlines and arcs. The hunger pushes into that scar, finds the hard ring of old surgery, and recoils, then presses again, probing. It can't dissolve the scar without destroying the container. I feel its frustration as pressure, not emotion. I hold an image in my mind. Greenland's interior caving in. The red layer pocket crushed, tunnels collapsed, vents sealed by tons of refrozen melt. Nothing flowing. No neat channels. The organism feels that too. It understands collapse. It knows what it is like to be buried and sealed for long ages. It also knows patience. That's the advantage it has over the famines of men. It doesn't fear decades. When it realizes that my scar is a good barrel but a bad fire hose, it does something I don't expect. It coils. The presence that flooded my body draws inward, concentrating inside the ring of old tissue. It threads itself along the scar, along my intestines, into smaller loops, locking itself into the only structure it can't easily rewrite. Pain spikes as it hooks on, then steadies. It isn't surrender, it's adaptation. It will try to find other exits later. For now, it takes the option that keeps it alive. I lever myself up by gripping the stove. My hands leave red smears that fade to normal skin as I watch. Sweat runs down my spine. My vision swims. My thoughts are clearer than they have any right to be for a man who just drank his nightmare. In the generator room, I override the last safety. My fingers move without needing my eyes. I know these levers now the way I know ladles and knives. The charges I planted pop in succession, deep under the station. A shudder travels up through the floor. People grab for walls. Alarms change pitch. Heating spike in primary shaft. Someone yells over the internal comm. "Shut it down," the chief orders. "I can't," the tech answers. "Controls aren't responding." The heaters in the red layer pocket run beyond tolerance. Ice that hasn't melted in millennia softens at the edges. The hollow expands, warps, then collapses. The temple bay groans. Steel beams twist. The floor under the structure tilts, then breaks. The entire stepped construct cants sideways, tearing free from bolts and welds. Red liquid sloshes across surfaces, then pours through cracks like gravy through a mesh. Eaters on the structure cling to bones and bars. Some leap clear. Others ride it down as it plunges into the collapsing hollow beneath. Containment drums topple, roll, slam into each other. Some crack open, their contents spilling out as they fall. The sound is like the station itself being broken down for parts. Sorensen calls into his headset for order, for reports, for numbers. No one answers with anything coherent. Water from melted ice floods tunnels. Cold air roars through broken vents. Then, as the heaters fail and the sudden warmth bleeds away into the surrounding mass, the slurry begins to refreeze. I run toward the emergency shelter module tucked into the bedrock on the far side of the station. Its designers assumed collapse would come from above, not below, but they at least built it to stay sealed against pressure. I throw doors open, shout directions, grab sleeves. I choose who I drag. You in! I bark at the comms tech with perpetual circles under his eyes. You too! I pull a mechanic who never once tried to taste anything that wasn't on his plate. You stay back, I tell an eater clutching a bandaged arm. You already chose. He catches my wrist. It could go so much faster if you let it, he snarls. I'm not interested in fast, I answer. I tear free. The module door closes on a cross-section of chaos. Faces pressed to glass, mouths open. Not my problem, I tell myself, and feel the lie stick like gristle. Inside, the shelter is cramped. Bare benches, emergency water, rations. We listen to the station die in creaks and crashes transmitted through the frame. One last groan rolls under our feet. Then a heavy stillness. Outside, the plateau settles back into something like level. Inside my stomach, the red thing settles too, anchored to the scar. You did that, the doctor whispers in the dim. You can't know that, I answer. He lets it go. He's smart enough to know which truths will only make the rooms smaller. The power drops to emergency mode. We sit in the low light. Someone cries quietly. Someone else mutters a prayer half forgotten from childhood. I count rations out loud because that's the one sound that has always held fear back for me. We survive the night. Dawn and rescue feel the same. A grinding at the outer hatch voices. Light knifes in when they open the door. Outside, where the temple bay once stood, a slump in the ice marks the hollow. The depression will harden again when the next wind scours it. The equipment that once filled it lies twisted and half buried. No red gleam shows on the surface. Incident site is cold, a rescuer reports into a mic. Structural collapse, possible geothermal interaction. No obvious contamination. Sorensen lives. He emerges from a different module, suit torn, expression brittle. He looks at the ruined bay, then at me. What did you do? He asks. I followed your instruction, I answer. Contain and destroy. You destroyed valuable samples, he snaps. You lost people, I reply. He stares at the hollow. We retrieved some material before the collapse, he mutters to himself. Not all is lost. Probably. There were drums outside the immediate fall zone. Freezing won't kill everything. He'll scrape what he can from the wreckage, bottle it, ship it. It won't feed the feast the organism wanted, but it will be something. Inside my body, under the bandages they tape to my abdomen, something smaller and more focused waits. They house us in a medical facility overlooking a grey harbour. Which harbour doesn't matter. Once you've spent long enough staring at ice, any water with ships on it feels like a city. The room is clean, all sharp edges and smooth surfaces. It isn't truly safe, nothing is, but the sheets are fresh, the nurses brisk, the machines familiar. News feeds on the wall screen mentioned Thule once. Arctic research outpost lost in structural collapse, the anchor reads. Partial crew recovery. Investigation ongoing. A photograph of the station before the collapse flashes up. The bay looks like any other building. The red glow and bone structure never made it into the frame. To anyone else, it's just a cluster of modules on ice. Dr. Sorensen visits in person. Without the parka and the shouting, he looks smaller. He sits in the chair by my bed and opens his tablet. We need to finalize your debrief, he begins. The board wants a clear narrative. You want tidy, I answer. You won't get tidy. What you did with the generators. What you think I did, I correct. He tightens. There's enough evidence to assign blame, Mads, but that's not my purpose here. I want to know if any unsealed biological material left the site aside from what we gathered in drums. I don't know what your team scraped off their boots, I reply. I know what I saw. Most of it is entombed under meters of newly frozen ice. Unless someone drills there again, it stays. He studies my face. Any sign of airborne transmission? None, I answer. People only changed after contact, ingestion, or intense proximity to the red bands. And cognitive impact? He asks. On you specifically. You mean, do I hear voices? I ask. Do I dream about eating you? Do you feel influenced? He clarifies. Compelled? Directed? I consider lying. Then I remember he isn't asking for my sake. I feel aware, I answer. Too aware. Of roots, of how food moves, of how people move toward food. But I already watched that before Thule. I tap my temple. It's my trade. Any new cravings? He presses. I picture the hall of bones, the skin maps, the red lines on my scar. Nothing I can't manage, I answer. He nods, jotting something. Medical scans show scar tissue has thickened, he notes. Some unusual microflora in your gut. But nothing matches known pathogens. We'll keep you under observation for a while. After that what? I ask. You send me home to fish? He gives a small, humorless smile. We have a proposal. Your understanding of logistics and rationing is unique. The Trust runs several emergency food distribution programs, climate-stressed regions, conflict zones. We could use your expertise. There it is, the move. Keep the dangerous man close. Keep the anomaly where you can see it. Use everything. You want me to help you send food into places that already burn it, I say. I want you to help us send it smarter, he replies. Fewer riots, fewer losses. Whatever happened at Thule, you kept more people alive than I expected. That's useful. And if I say no? I ask. He looks out the window at the harbour. You'll be classified as unstable, potentially compromised by the anomaly, and quarantined for as long as our regulations allow. We both know what that means. I like kitchens, I tell him. I like knowing what goes where. Give me a chair and a terminal and a view of the stockroom. He takes that as agreement. Doctors poke and prod for weeks. They scan my abdomen twice a day at first, then taper off. They find scar tissue, odd textures, unusual kinds of bacteria. They catalogue it and come back with more questions. You should eat bland food, one recommends. Avoid spices, fats, highly processed sugars. Your system is delicate. My system is picky, I answer. Not delicate. I follow their guidelines anyway. Not because I care about their opinion, but because I don't want to give the thing inside me more complex samples than necessary. When they clear me, they install me in a small flat near an operations centre, the kind of anonymous building that manages shipments without ever touching them physically. My new kitchen is the opposite of Thule. There is plenty in the shops. Bread, fresh vegetables, meat from animals that never saw snow. I buy little. Old habits. I portion my own meals onto a small plate, eat slowly, keep notes on how my stomach reacts. The scar has changed. The red marks are darker now, more defined. They form lines that wrap around my torso, crossing my ribs, my sides, my lower back. If I squint, I can trace coastlines and shipping lanes. At night, under a single bare bulb, I stand in front of the mirror and follow one line with my fingertip. Up my left side, across my chest, over my right shoulder. In my mind's eye, ships move along that path. Cargo holds filled with grain and powdered nutrient blocks. Planes take off, heavy with aid packages. Trucks rumble along rough roads. I touch a node under my ribs. A port. A shiver runs through me, not in my nerves, but somewhere deeper. A warehouse stacked with pallets. Workers moving boxes. Someone opens a crate, breaks open a ration bar, bites in. There is no red in that bar. The organism inside me learns anyway. It listens, it watches, it waits. At the operations center, my job is simple. A wall of screens shows the world. Weather patterns, conflict zones, population density, warehouse stocks, proposed routes. Planners hand me draft plans. We send a ship here, a flight there, convoy along this road. What do you think? My mouth answers before my higher mind catches up. That port is a bottleneck, I tell them. You send too much there, and one riot stops all of it. Route half your shipments through this older coal harbour instead. There's less oversight but more local cooperation. And skip this road, landslides. Build a smaller bridge here. They nod, impressed. They implement changes. On a screen in the corner, lines trace the final routes. They look familiar. Too familiar. At lunch one day, I catch myself sketching on a napkin. It's the same network the skin in the storage bay showed me. Same hub and spoke layout, same arcs. Nice work, a colleague comments, glancing over. Looks like the global aid map. You planning to do my job next? Just keeping my hand busy, I answer. I crumple the napkin and toss it away. That night, back in my flat, I strip to the waist and stand in front of the mirror again. The red lines on my scar glow faintly in the low light, though that might be my imagination. I trace a line that runs from my lower abdomen up to a point under my collarbone. In my mind, that path arcs from one continent to another. A sensation flicks through me like a distant conversation carried along pipework, workers sweating in a warehouse, children in a refugee camp tearing open foil packets, mouths moving. I lean on the sink. You're not going anywhere else, I tell the reflection. You stay here. You use me. That's the arrangement. There was never a real deal. There is only cohabitation. Could I go to someone? Tell the trust I'm compromised? A vector? They'd clap me in a box, open me under better equipment, test which routes it prefers. Could I go to a government agency? Shout about hidden organisms? They'd shut down aid shipments in panic and leave more people hungry while they argued over jurisdiction. This is how it ends for men like me. Not with a heroic sacrifice or a neat punishment, with a desk job that stretches into whatever is left of our years. I sit at my kitchen table with a plate of boiled potatoes and a small piece of fish. I cut the fish into exact halves, eat one, leave the other for later. My stomach complains, then settles. The scar itches, then quiets. The thing inside me shifts its coils, adjusting to new information from the routes I adjusted that day. On the news, cargo ships glide out of harbours. On my screen at work, planes arc across maps, leaving trajectories behind. In my mirror, those paths match the lines on my body. Coincidence has left the room. I tell myself what I did at Thule mattered. That burying the temple and scattering the main body of the organism under refrozen ice bought the world time. That keeping this small, knotted remnant inside a broken man slows it down further. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's another story we tell ourselves to live with what we've put on our own plates. Outside my window, cranes lift containers onto decks. Trucks roll out of yards. Inside my flat, I lift a fork, swallow carefully, and feel the patient thing in my gut take another note. I keep counting. Calories, routes, years. I don't stop. That's the cost of the choice I made.